Hello, my dears. Daniela here, and welcome to another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. Today, we're chatting with our very own Nicole Cooley, who's one of our Addo Aesthetics coaches, as well as faculty over at Addo Wellness Institute. She's our resident expert in all things finance, budgeting, and cash flow. And so I wanted to bring her on to have a conversation around these very important topics and also share about our financial literacy course that's coming up in March over at AWI. Now, something that I would love for you to reflect on this year is profit. I know we talk a lot about $1 million business, and it can really create this energy that we just have to go, and keep spending money to fix it, even though we haven't figured out what it is, right? A lot of times we want to throw money at things, but we're not really understanding what the root cause is. Now, the ability to truly do that, understand what that root cause is going to come down to knowing your numbers and being able to understand what your financial statements are actually telling you. You may learn that your services are not priced appropriately, or that you're greatly overpaying or underpaying your team, all from your financial statements. So have a listen to this episode, and if you feel called to join us for this short 4-week course on financial literacy, click the link below this episode to learn more. All right, let's go ahead and play that episode. All right, Nicole, welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. This is like the perfect time to talk about money.
It is. New year, new money plan, new resolutions, all of it.
I feel like the New Year's resolutions, if you are somebody that makes resolutions, it always tends to be about health, wealth, right? What's the other one?
Yeah.
Health, and wealth, really.
Yeah, pretty much. Those are like the two. Food, working out,
yeah.
Money.
But those are things that, it's the beginning of the year. There is, for whatever reason, there's this new energy that so many people feel. It's a clean slate. It's a fresh start. It's, hey, maybe 2023 didn't go as I planned, but what I'd like to do moving forward is, hit this goal. And so I don't know about anybody else, but I'm sure probably other people felt this, but 2023 went by so freaking fast. And I know just as we get older and older, it's like those years just seem to go so quickly. And so this year will be, it's going to be summer before we know it. And so we've got to start taking action on those goals right now. Every single day matters, and utilize that new energy and really nurture that to hold on to it and be as committed to these goals as possible. But because finance is such an important topic, it's on, top of mind for so many of our listeners really wanting to hit their financial goals, get to that next level in business. I wanted to bring you on specifically to talk about really the difference between cash flow and financial statements. And I think this is a really important distinction for a CEO to understand. So how do you define those two?
Yeah, I think that something that I often see is people try to hit the ground running with these plans or spreadsheets or numbers, but they don't really understand what the numbers mean or what they are telling them. And so there's no shame in knowing you need to take a step back and do some education that you probably have never had around money and accounting or finance. So you have that deeper understanding when you do put these tools together and start to track and understand, what these tools are telling you that we talk about in our programs and on the podcast. And so the first step of that is really bookkeeping, because that's standard. We all need it. We have to have it. I always say it keeps the IRS happy, and we want to keep them happy so we don't have to spend any energy on them and we can get back to our business. And yeah, we need that. It's an important piece, but it's not the only piece. And a lot of people stop there with their bookkeeping and think, that they've done everything that they need to do with understanding numbers in their business. And I would say that that's not true, that you can go so much deeper and have such a better understanding if you add this element of cash flow in as well. And
I
so
feel like,
bookkeeping, go ahead.
well, I feel like something that I hear a lot is when a spa CEO gets their financial statements, they'll be like, on paper, it looks like I'm doing
Yeah.
great. But then
Mhm.
I go to my bank account and I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, and that can be for many reasons, depending on the specific situation. But some people aren't getting their financial statements, even if they have a great bookkeeper. It can be 2-3 weeks until you get those statements delivered to your inbox. That's old data at that point. It's still good data. We need to look at it. We need to understand it. We need to know what it means. But is that the right data to make a business decision off weeks later? Maybe not. And so that's where the cash flow component can come in. And the cash flow really ties those pieces together, to where like the discrepancy between what you see on your profit and loss statement and what's in your bank account, cash flow is going to tell you where that went. Could be an owner's draw. It could be some of these things that are treated differently on paper for the bookkeepers versus the timing of the cash and when it leaves your account.
So for me, I found that my profit and loss and these other, financial statements that I'm getting from my CPA, that is what I'm using to help me set our financial goals and do our projections.
Mhm.
And, if you guys have not done that yet, I really recommend doing that in Q4. You obviously have to figure out what you did in December to kind of add that in there. Inside of Growth Factor, we have this really cool goal setting calculator that puts your exact numbers in there and calculates the percentage. It's really important to not just say, I want to do $1 million in the year, so I'm going to divide that by 12, and every month I'm going to do 83,333. Business doesn't work that way. We know there's busy seasons and slow seasons, and it can be different for every type of business. A wax studio might have different busy seasons than someone that specializes in specialty facials, so what we're doing with those statements to make projections is looking at like, hey, what did we do last January? And how can we set a goal off of that? And doing that throughout the year. Where with cash flow, you and I, Nicole, were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Cash flow, what we're looking at, I would say your financial statements are kind of past data. Cash flow is present moment. And if you're looking at how can I decide if I have enough money to hire? How can I decide if I have enough money to spend X amount on marketing? Um, those are the things that we're looking at. How much cash do we have? And how frequently do you recommend people kind of log into their YNAB accounts or look at those types of things?
I'm like smiling because I want to say as much as possible. That might freak people. I think at least most people are doing it weekly that I work with, and that's like a good cadence for them. They might be doing some like check-ins throughout the week, and then they kind of sit down and have, I call it their CFO time on maybe a Monday. A lot of spas are busy over the weekend, so you can kind of sit down and say like, what happened? Let me plan for the week. And they're kind of checking in with that. And I would agree with you. I think cash flow pretty simply answers the question. Like you log onto your bank account, you see a balance, and cash flow is what does this money need to do for me, and creating a plan for it. Because you have bills, you have things you're saving for, we have taxes to save. There's all these different pieces that you have to account for. And it doesn't just magically happen. You have to have this other system to kind of help yourself get there.
I know for me, when you and I actually started working together several years ago now, um, I was somebody, I like to have money in the bank. I am a little more, I like to have a decent sized business savings. And I had always managed off of my financial statements. I had not managed off of cash flow. And so I knew that I had, X amount of expenses every month, but I didn't know what had actually gone through, I'm like, is there going to be this big thing that's come out? Is there going to, and that was the uncertainty piece that made me feel like I always needed so much more in the bank. And when I started using YNAB based on your recommendation in our work together, I was able to see, oh, this has already gone through. This has already gone through. And I started managing based off of percentages. And it actually allowed me to have so much more security and groundedness feeling in the finances. It allowed me to feel comfortable paying myself significantly more than I had been paying myself, and really just understand, like, what am I actually able to do with my money? And when you are managing your business finances based on past data, you just don't have that level of knowledge to be able to make those decisions, which can ultimately affect your life. If it's affecting how much you're paying yourself, if it's affecting business choices that you're making because you're not sure if you can afford that or not, but maybe you actually really can, you
Yeah,
know?
I think a really common question we get is, can I afford to hire? And, if you have a cash flow management system, or if you're trying to understand if you can afford anything, maybe it's a new piece of equipment or something else, you can build that payment or that salary into your cash flow system for 2, 3 months. See if you can put money there and build a little buffer in that section. So then like, yeah, I can afford this. And then you have confidence when you go out and make that choice. So that's just another example of, what you can do with different systems. It's not, just about spreadsheets. It's about how you feel about it, right? It's about
Mhm.
getting in and playing with the numbers and understanding like what your priorities are, and understanding where like you have hit goals, right? Like, I think when we were working together, it was like, okay, yeah, your business savings is good. Like, this is our goal. We hit it. Now you can focus on something else. But until you kind of sit down and map it all out, you don't know. And so there's just this uncertainty around all of it. But when you can start to put percentages or parameters around, okay, I'm covered for payroll, I'm covered for expenses, and I've been good for 3, 4 months. Yeah, I think I can take that owner's draw and feel good about it and feel confident that I'm not taking too much out of the business. And really, like, that is, I think, both of our ultimate goal for most people is just to be paying themselves more and taking money for themselves and their family. And so that can be a big motivator to get this figured out, when really that is the ultimate goal, is like, how do we get more money in your pocket as the business owner?
It's amazing what I feel like women in general, um, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of men out there as well, but I a lot of women have blocks around money and talking about money, feeling confident with money. There's just a lot of things that come up. And I know I've had plenty of my own blocks that I've had to work through. I used to identify the amount of money that I made with my success. Big mistake, but we all work through those different things. And I think that part of being a leader and being a CEO, allowing you to really nurture your people, make the right decisions, is being the best version of yourself. And if you are someone that's so worried that, oh, I hired this person and I'm paying them and they're just sitting there, or I'm
Mhm.
paying, I hear that a lot. I'm going to hire someone and they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
Well, number one, well, this is a whole nother podcast, but number one, do the time tracker and figure out what the heck to delegate off of your plate, because there's always something to do in a business. But if you know your numbers and you know that that employee is paying for themselves, you're going to be able to nurture them and train them and develop them with a completely different energy and a different approach that can really allow them to flourish and grow in a way that will ultimately generate more revenue for you. But if
Mhm.
you're coming at them from a place of scarcity and fear and lack, and I'm paying them $20 an hour and they're just sitting there, um, it's not going to be the same type of environment. And that all comes from knowing your numbers. And yes, there's an opportunity cost. I'm not saying just let, everybody sit around, but you have to be able to understand, like, we're not just leaking money out of the bottom of the bucket, you know?
Yeah, and that's part of it too with cash flow is not letting money leak out of the bucket. Some of these traditional kind of standard things that we talk about in cash flows, like cutting subscriptions that don't work and realizing when you've been double charged or when something has increased significantly. Those are kind of more kind of traditional ways to think about doing a budget, but those are the easy things. And those just happen as like a byproduct of creating a cash flow management system. Because you're in there, you're looking at things and you're like, that doesn't look right. Oh, I need to go cancel that. Oh, I'm going to go cancel that now. And so it does kind of help you keep your arms around things just as kind of a natural byproduct of what you're doing for like the bigger picture of the business.
And you do see if you've been double charged because you set a target amount. So if your phone bill is $100 every month, and then there's $200 in that bubble, or if it's higher than what you set the budget for, it's like, oh, something's off there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really, it's just incredible if we can look at our finances as data and try to remove that emotional piece. I know a lot of the reason that people don't go into YNAB or don't go into QuickBooks or don't go into is because it's overwhelming and stressful from an emotional state. But if we can remove that emotion and just go in and say, hey, I'm going to do this, it's going to be a huge help in moving past some of those things and removing that block that you have,
For sure. And there's a learning curve to this. I never pretend that there's not. You will have to learn a new skill set. Some people are really naturally inclined to this area, but I find that a lot of my spa people, they're not. And that is fine because you're so good at this other area, right? And so it's going to take some work and some education to kind of get these other skills up to par so you can kind of run your business super effectively from a financial perspective. But it's so worth it if you can put the time and energy into education and just new skill sets and evolving. And if you're already doing a cash flow management system, like there's always a way to kind of take it to the next level and evaluate how you can optimize and make things better. I mean, there's people that we've been working with and, you and your own business, Daniela, for years, and we just continue to optimize and move forward as the business changes and it scales. This is never like a once and done. It's like a once and then forever you'll be using it.
Yeah. Just like, yeah, it is like systems, right? They're always evolving, always evolving. So what is the 2024 message for cash flow for that listener out there, that person that is saying, hey, I want to get started on my numbers. I don't know where to begin. What is the next right step without like causing overwhelm? What's how can I get started and just move a little bit closer towards my goals?
Yeah, so I would say without it being a super overwhelming step, like go learn YNAB, which is the software we use and recommend. So if you're feeling very motivated, go check that out. It stands for You Need a Budget. And so it's YNAB.com. But if that seems like too big of a step to take, I would say to just start thinking in percentages, and everyone should have bookkeeping. So start with your bookkeeping and start to use what you have now to go back and look at like, what was my payroll percentage and, what percent should I be saving each month for taxes? And how am I doing that? Am I going to do a transfer to a separate account for taxes? Those are a couple easy steps that you can take that kind of start to shift you. Yes, you're using that past data, but you're using it in a way to kind of understand what's happened. And then you can start to use those percentages to start to plan going forward. So that, 40% of my revenue is going to be for payroll. I need to be transferring 10% of my revenue to a tax account every month. That's cash flow, right? And understanding that. There's so much more we can build on. There's so much more that we can understand. But just that shift from I've looked backwards and now I'm going to use that data to look forwards and apply it to where I am today. That's the biggest and hardest shift to make. We can build systems all day long, but really it's about your mindset of I'm going to I'm going to start to plan ahead and understand what's happening now and how I'm going to use that to plan for the next couple of months and for the whole year within money in your business.
Yeah, that's so important. And I wanted to just touch on one thing because I get this question a lot is because we do in Growth Factor, we do revenue reporting and we ask for profit percentage. And a lot of people will say, I don't know what that is. And it's as simple as saying, so when you have your P&L, you have your top line revenue, and they break it into these different sections. So you simply take your net profit, which is the bottom. You're going to divide that by your revenue, your top line gross revenue, and see what percentage of the net profit is of the gross profit. That's your profit percentage. You're going to do the same thing for labor. You're going to do the same thing for everything else in between, for, excluding tax. And that's going to be your kind of operating. So we're breaking it into these big percentages. When I say 40% payroll, 30% operating, 15 tax, 15 profit, those are guidelines that you can kind of start with as benchmarks and know that everybody's business is going to be a little bit different. So if you have a high income spouse or partner, your tax percentage might be different. That's something you need to discuss with your CPA. If you have a wax studio, you might have a lot lower operating cost because your cost of treatment is lower. So use those as benchmarks to kind of see, and then really look at your own data and set goals around those numbers to see, all right, here's where I was at in 2023. Maybe I had a 15% profit in 2023, but I really want to get to a 20% profit. How would I do that? Can I lower my operating? Can I, what are the other things that I can do to get that percentage over there? So that's what we mean when we're talking about percentages and thinking in percentages. And you can even go more granular in saying, hey, I've got 30% operating, but within that 30%, 10% of that is marketing. And, this percent is my rent and utilities. And so you're even breaking that down further if you want to go that granular.
Yeah. And it really doing that is really like a health assessment of your business, because if you've never done this before, probably you're not going to be at where the percentages where you want them to be. But oftentimes when I do this with people and we sit down and figure their percentages, one of them is really out of whack. And that gives you an idea as a business owner of maybe where your focus should be. So if your operating expenses are like way higher than they should be, but your other percentages are pretty good, okay, well, there's your focus to kind of work on the finances in your business. And then sometimes it's payroll. And then that gives you a clue on maybe looking at pay structures or like what's going on there. Dig into that area of the business to figure that out too. So it gives you, there's so much we can focus on, as in your business. And these percentages give you a clue on like where your efforts could make the biggest impact to your numbers.
Yeah, love that. All right. Well, if you guys want to learn more about financial literacy, we've got Nicole teaching our financial literacy course over at AWI at the Addo Wellness Institute. This is a quick month-long $500 course. It's going to go over all of your financial statements, talk about budgeting, all things specific to spa. So we've got more information below this episode for you guys to check that out. First class is starting March 4th. Is that right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So make sure you check that out and really do this for yourself. Really dive into your numbers, look at the percentages. You can do YNAB. YNAB is somewhere between $85 to $100 a year for the software. And it will pay for itself in doing that. So I really encourage you to stick. If finances is part of your resolution or part of your goals for 2024, educate yourself to really understand your numbers. That's how you're going to make the biggest change. All right. Thank you guys so much. And we'll catch you on the next episode.